Great. Hi, everyone. On behalf of HR.com, I'm Rhonda Gallant, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this webcast, FutureFit, How to Scale Up Essential Skills, sponsored by Go1. This webcast has been pre-approved for one HRCI credit, may also be submitted for SHRM credit, so please be sure to attend the complete webcast in order to receive your credits. You'll receive an email from HR.com within 2 business days that will include your certification information. And during this webcast, so we'll have some polls, we have the chat wide open for some great engagement. We invite you to do that. And then if you have questions for either of the presenters or for Go1 or even myself, you can use the Q&A in your webinar controls to submit any questions. But again, as Shannon will mention, the chat is open and we really would love to have some engagement. So make best use of that. All right. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to turn it over. Shannon Tipton will get us started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's really an honor to be here in front of you and representing Go1 in our initiative of upskilling and preparing ourselves to be future fit for whatever comes in the future. And you've got Shannon and Shannon here. And that doesn't often happen, does it, Shannon?
It doesn't. It's exciting. I love it.
Yeah, we have the Shannon squared happening here.
Yep.
And in order to prepare you, if you want, this presentation is built off of an ebook that was created by myself, Michelle Ockers, Laura Overton, representing Emerging Stronger. And the QR code for that ebook is there on your screen right now. Of course, not necessary for this webinar, so no homework needed. But if you want to have access to it after we end our time together today, then that would probably be beneficial for you. Now, to really get us warmed up, I would like really quick for you guys to, in the chat, I would like for you to think about your guilty pleasure. So what is your guilty pleasure? Take a moment, think about that. Chocolate, wine, reality TV shows. So take a moment, think about it, and then put into the chat. There we go. Let's get that chat warmed up. Eating junk. I am with you as I've got my big bag of Cheetos downstairs. General Hospital. Oh,
I love that.
Gosh. I grew up, I don't know about you, Shannon, but I grew up with watching Days of Our Lives. My mother watched Days of Our Lives. Cigars. Oh, yeah, I've got a few people that could relate to that are close to me. CSI, Netflix, sweets. There is I love those reality type of shows. And if you have HBO Max, there is a pottery. I can't think of the exact name of it right now, but there's a pottery reality show that's just like the Great Baking Show that's, it's English, same format, same everything, but it's with pottery. And it's just so interesting. And I love it. So I recommend if you have HBO Max, go look that up. You'll enjoy it.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. Okay. So now that we've got the chat all warmed up, let's get started. So my name is Shannon Tipton. I am the owner and founder of Learning Rebels and also the co-founder of Emerging Stronger. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and all of those happy things. I like to say, if you can't find me, then the zombie apocalypse has finally hit. I am on all the places, and I encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn, especially as our time goes by here today. You're going to have questions, and that's okay, especially after we conclude. You're going to go, oh my gosh, I wish I'd asked her. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, and you can ask me all of those follow-up questions. And I'll turn it over to Shannon H, so you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Shannon Herrera. I'm head of content curation here at Go1. You can also find me on LinkedIn. And I'm super excited to talk about this topic. I think it's really important right now that we talk about how do we prepare for our future. So yeah, I'm excited to get started.
Excellent. Well, then let's start doing just that. When we think about future skills, it's hard. You know, we think about becoming future fit. What makes this difficult is that we're not sure about the skills that we are going to need for the future. How do you prepare for a future that is uncertain? We know that there are skills and roles that are occurring today that weren't even in existence 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. And in the chat, I'd love for you to give me some examples of some of the roles that you're experiencing that you didn't even imagine would be in our vocabulary today. They weren't even in existence before. I'll give you a contact tracing. Absolutely. That's something that wasn't part of, you know, our vocabulary. Social distancing for sure. Mental health first responder. Oh, that's so great, Heather. Thank you for that. Leading remote work teams. Yes. The creation of bots. You know, the creation of bots was happening before the pandemic. And my company, Learning Rebels, we are creating bots and have created bots in years past. But what's happening now is how they're being used is really different than how they were used a couple of years ago. So I appreciate that. That's a great example of a skill that we have that now needs to flex and adapt to what we're doing today. Emotional intelligence, TikTok content creator, right, Erica? Oh my gosh. And L&D can take a lot of lessons from some of those TikTok creators, for sure. And the key here is that a lot of our future fit skills, and you think about those emotional skills. So I saw emotional intelligence there, I think from Vanessa, as being a future fit skill. And you're absolutely right, Vanessa. And skills like that are often attributed to leadership. They say leadership needs to have those emotional intelligence skills, or leadership needs to have those communication skills, but they're really no longer the domain of the elite leadership, if you will. Now everyone is going to have to be equipped with those sorts of human skills in order to work across, you know, your workplace and across departments and throughout your industry. And I'm seeing some of these skills still rolling in. Management of cloud content. Yeah, being forward thinking and continuous improving. And that leads me to thinking about what human skills will we need in order to be successful in the future. So what I'd like you to do is I would like you to go to, we're going to warm up the Menti board now. So you're going to go to menti.com and use the code 6147-9148. And I would like for you to input what human skills do you think we need in order to be future fit? And while you guys are inputting this information, I'm going to ask Shannon. So Shannon, from your perspective and with your clients, what are you seeing as some of the key human skills needed to be future fit?
I think, you know, leaning into that emotional intelligence has been something that comes up often with our customers, particularly as we go into a remote work environment, or people are navigating. And often, you know, we're finding that a lot of our customers are finding that they're going to stay in a remote work environment that they hadn't anticipated. And emotional intelligence in a remote work environment can be very different than in person. Understanding how people are communicating via Zoom, like whether their camera is on or off and what that might mean for somebody, I think has become something that our customers are really looking for ways to help, like you said, not just their leaders, but their employees understand how to relate to people better and differently in this changing work environment. So I think that's what we're seeing the most. But you know, even really simple things like communication and emails and tone and things like that, and that, you know, we give a lot of, I think, leeway to people when we're in person because we understand their body language and we can interpret things. And now it's like, oh no, if you're sending a Slack message, you need to understand what the tone is behind that and how it may be interpreted. And so I think that's a lot of what we're seeing.
Yeah, that's a lot of communication oriented type of skills. And I'm seeing some really interesting ideas coming up in our word cloud here. I saw a change champion that caught my eye. You know, I think that's another example of a skill that was needed in the past and was utilized in the past. But now, as the workforce is shifting and changing, you really need someone to help shepherd all of those changes. Is there something here that was popping out to you, Shannon?
So in the inclusion part was something that I think inclusivity, I think is something that we're just having so many more conversations about, which I love and I think is so important, and how to have those conversations in a really effective way, and that it's not, I think some people can often hear it as kind of lip service, but how do you do it in a way that actually feels like it's making impact? So
Right.
definitely that.
And I see Kelly's message here in the chat giving a real life example of how we can go sideways on tools like Slack, if we're not careful. So, those communication skills really do become critical. Now, I would like to show you here some of the words that when we ran our own word cloud, when Emerging Stronger ran their own word cloud through some of the research from McKinsey and HBR, as well as SHRM, and we thought about what does the new world of work look like from a human skill perspective. These were the words that seemed to pop up. And you see emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence was a big one in our own Mentimeter. So I saw collaboration, I saw communication, I saw understanding in the Mentimeter we had previously. Creativity, is one that does keep coming forward, because thinking differently, being flexible, being adaptable, all requires that level of creativity. Right? We have to think differently about the world of work today and what future fit skills look like in order to be prepared for some of the skills that we're going to actually put into action. So now let me ask you, what are you doing? We're going to put up another Mentimeter here. What are you doing to equip your workforce with these future fit skills that you've just identified? Okay, so are you starting to build them now for leaders and managers? Are you offering them to everyone for self-directed learning? Are you being proactive in building these skills across the organization? Or are you just realizing that maybe these skills aren't on your wider agenda? Or, you know what, we're really not going to tackle them, we're going to buy them. And that's okay too, if you're just going to buy them. So how do you, thinking back on what you just answered on our Menti board, how are you now going to equip your workforce for those particular skills? Okay, I see a lot of people were starting to build them for leaders and managers. Excellent. That's a start, right? You've got to start somewhere. So you got to start with your leaders and managers that can help message down the importance of some of these future fit skills. And I love the honesty. These skills are not on our wider agenda yet. You've got to start from somewhere. And part of starting from somewhere is the realization of, oh my gosh, we haven't started yet. And now maybe we best start, right? Maybe we best start moving out of leaders and managers into the broader workplace. And self-directed learning, great, putting learning into people's hands, or maybe helping them with more specific learning journeys. Okay, and I'm curious, and you can put into the chat as well, if you have had any other additional ideas about what you're doing to equip your workforce for these future fit skills. And so now we kind of see, right, that there's a gap, wouldn't you say, Shannon?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, particularly those, like you said, love the honesty about that that it's not on their wider agenda, but as we're seeing with how quickly work is changing and with how many people are changing jobs, I think it's going to be really important to get on top of this.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so now how are you going to scale these future fit skills? So here's what I'd like you to think. I want you to pause, and I want you to think about, don't put anything in the chat just yet. I want you to pause. I want you to take a moment and think, Some of you are doing something for your leaders. Some of you are doing something for self-directed learning. Some of you are still in the planning stages, and that's okay. Now that you have all of this in motion, some of you may have some of this in motion, thinking about how are you going to scale this. So take a moment, don't put anything down just yet. When I say hit send is when I want you to send it. So think about it, type it into the chat. Do not hit send just yet, but take a moment, pause. How am I going to scale? How am I going to scale? Or how am I going to keep scaling? Right? Take a moment, think about it, write it in the chat. All right, now everybody's got their comments in the chat, I hope. Now hit send. Let's see what everybody comes back with. 360 feedback, directed learning, yes. So 360 feedback becomes really critical to scaling up, right? Because you can find out what those missing gaps are. Constant communication, yes. So this is something that's really important for making sure that you can scale up. We've got to keep talking about it. Focus groups, making it a priority within the organization. Closing our eyes and hoping it gets all better.
I feel like that's a lot of, I feel like that there's a lot of organizations, that's their strategy.
Right, you know, and I see you, I do. And
Yep.
we've all been there. Communication, prioritization, quarterly learning themes. I love it. Directed, helping people with their learning journeys. Love that. Mentoring, perfect. Excellent. All of these are really great ideas for helping you scale up these important skills. And so some of this also requires a certain typo on my screen. There we go. But seeing technology through a different lens. I wonder what happened there. I totally missed this slide being a big fat typo. So I apologize for that. But it requires seeing technology through a different lens. And a lot of what we're talking about here requires technology to be an enabler of what we're going to do. So thinking about FutureFit Skills may mean bridging a certain digital divide within your own workplace. And so this is one area where when we think about becoming future fit and developing future fit skills is bringing technology in, but with these ideas in mind, that technology as an enabler means that we have to allow people to have access, that it's allowing learning to be just in time. It's allowing learning to be more self-directed. It's democratizing learning. It's about helping us with putting the right dollars in the right places. It's not about saving dollars. And sometimes we think about technology as being that, oh, this will help us save a couple of bucks here and there. Really, technology as an enabler helps you to more effectively use the dollars that you have. And then it also helps us to be more adaptable, which was something that you all put in your word cloud as being a future fit skill, is being flexible and adaptable. And so this means that technology underpins a lot of what we're doing. It's not a solution, but it is an enabler, and looking at technology through an entirely different lens and thinking about how it's going to help us as we move forward, right? So all of these things that you just put into the chat: mentoring, directed learning, communication, prioritization, learning themes, right? Making training available, creating focus groups, being more communicative. All of this requires a certain amount of technology underpinning, right? And so now what are we going to do here? And so now let me ask you, how are you using technology to help you with some of the future fit skills that you are thinking about and that we're talking about right here? So you can go ahead and put that into the chat. And as Go1 being a technology company, so this dovetails nicely. So where do you see technology as an enabler, Shannon?
So with Go1 being a learning platform and content aggregator, our like where we really fit in is helping our customers get access to the training that they need, and particularly in that just-in-time and self-directed way. So with our library being so vast and having so many different content providers, one thing that we do really well is what we bring content in a very timely manner. So for example, when COVID hit, we actually had COVID training in our library within about 2 weeks. So by the end of March, we actually had COVID training. And so like that just in time, we were absolutely there for our customers. And so that's where I feel like technology and training can be really helpful, is getting that access, your employees access to that immediately.
Right. Yeah, and I see here the comment by, forgive me if I get your name incorrect, Dunja, with the 70-20-10 model. And yes, technology as an enabler can really put that 70-20-10 model into, into action, right? Because you can help people be more self-directed and take more ownership of what they're doing. But then there's also challenges, right? So technology as a challenge is, I love this image that I found here about balance or burnout, and too much technology burns us out. Not enough doesn't give us balance. So being future fit and developing those future fit skills means being able to balance what we're doing. Now, where in your organizations, and I see all of these wonderful comments here about how technology can be an enabler for your future fit skills. So now let me ask you, where is technology a challenge for you?
I think within Go One, what we hear from our customers is finding ways to allow learners to connect their training or use that as a connection tool with their employees. And so we've actually come up with some strategies to help our customers, create like lunch and learns or things like that, so that they learn something on the system, but then they come together and have that connection piece. And I think that that's been really helpful for some of our customers who have really felt like their employees are burnt out on technology. So I think finding that balance can be really helpful.
Absolutely. And so I'm curious, with the people out in the universe listening right now, what are some of the challenges you see in regards to technology? Yeah, that technology can be a crutch to find answers without having mastery for our trade skilled employees. That's very true. We come to depend on it. And I think as a whole, as a society, we've come to depend on it. We can just go and Google something really quickly without really having to learn any foundational skills for that particular skill set. And sometimes that can be a help, and sometimes that can be a hindrance. I have a concern with using tech to streamline processes to the point where we lose that human connection. And I think that there's very valid concerns there. And one of the most interesting things that I've seen most recently is, for those of you in the Midwest, if you're familiar with White Castle is prototyping actual robots to do burger flipping and French fry dropping, right? And so if you think about that, you think about a robot actually flipping burgers, what does that mean for future fit skills? While we may have a robot that's flipping burgers, that doesn't mean that we're taking the human out of the equation, does it? It means that we're doing something different with the human. So maybe the human then has to monitor the robot or maintain the robot, or do some of the things that the robot cannot do. So now we're reassessing where the human fits with the skills and with the job roles that we have. Right? We have a hard time reaching our trade skills employees who don't feel free to take the time to learn on the job. They see it as extra. Right, exactly. And that's interesting that you say that, Erica, because we're going to talk about that here in just one moment. Okay, so now what does the data say? And one of the things that we ask in order for us to be more future fit is looking at data from a completely different perspective as well. So we're asking you to look at technology from a different perspective, but we're also asking you to look at data from a different perspective. Learning innovation done well delivers impact. Technology done well delivers impact. Taking a look at the different innovative streams of learning, self-directed, social, informal, doing more innovative things with learning, in particular, thinking differently, being more flexible and adaptable with learning, and we do it well, does create an impact, and it does add value. And what we're asking you to do is to take a look at, what does your data tell you about your learning interventions? So let me ask you, what data do you use right now to help you determine if your learning is aligned with a business need? I'm not asking about whether or not you've got butts in seats for your online learning initiatives. Our LMSs can tell us that. But what data are you using to ensure that your learning is in fact impacting business value and business need? So I'd like to see that in the chat. And so, Shannon, thinking about all of the information that comes out of, I'm sure you guys have tons of data, that you can reach in and use. But when you're talking to your clients and you're talking to them about how tools like Go1 can help them impact business value, what does that conversation look like?
So often we talk about how learning can support, right? So, what is what our business goals are and things like that. And then how can the learning really support that? And then what we will look at is the data as far as, what kind of content is being consumed in those industries. And we can help them, help guide them through the process based on all of the data. Like you said, we have, lots of customers that we can look at and different industries to say, this is where you may want to look at adding content to your library, or other areas that you may want to look at based on our experiences with other customers. So that's really where it becomes helpful, is in that in comparing them. So
yep. And I'm looking at the chat here, and Faisal, again, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. I love this. In the sales department where I used to work, the matrix were time to close and sales increase. That's a perfect matrix to say whether or not learning is impacting business, because that's what you want. Is what we do creating real business value? And those sorts of matrix really help you determine that, especially if it's coming out of Salesforce. And it says here from Vanessa, we have reports we can run with any and all date ranges. Are we trending in the right direction between improving hiring efforts and our training program? Because hiring efforts is also a business matrix, isn't it? So you think about time to hire, time to mastery, and whether or not they are staying with you. All of those different steps within the process means money. Every time you lose someone after you hire them, that means money. So then that has great business impact. So anytime you're looking at those sorts of matrix, it means that you are determining whether or not you're adding business value. And in the end of the day, that's what we all want, right? Revenue per employee matrix and surveys. Absolutely. First year turnover, number of closings. Thank you for that, Karen. Absolutely. If you work in an industry where there might be franchise openings or franchise closings, or corporate stores openings, sales per square foot, things of those natures will tell you. And so if you're analyzing the number of closing versus the number of openings, or sales per year on year increases, is your training helping to impact that? If so, how? Right? And that's really when you start thinking about gathering the right data and gathering the right tools to help ensure that your training is making the impact that it needs to make. So when we're thinking about this, what the bigger question becomes, what do mature organizations do? So if we go back to our own data, so Emerging Stronger Go1 data pointed us in a very succinct direction. When it comes to mature learning organizations, what are some of the underpinning principles behind the overall strategies? Well, some of the underpinning principles that we determined were these 5. And the ebook that I guided you to at the beginning of our session today breaks out these 5 principles and gives you some more information around what these 5 principles mean. And so underpinning your training content or underpinning your learning departments, it's about connecting with the right priorities, connecting with the right content, connecting with relevance, connecting with people, and lastly, connecting with data. Those are the 5 priorities that really underpin mature organizations. And so let me break this down for you. When we talk about connecting with the right priorities, this means that we have a North Star in our minds, and the North Star is business value. So when you think about your business, every organization has something different that is their North Star, something that is important to them as a business. Now, is your L&D department connected to that North Star of the business? I'm going to ask you to put that into the chat for me. Do you feel that your initiatives as an L&D department or as an L&D team, or maybe as an individual contributor, do you feel that you are connected to the priorities of your business? I'm going to have you put that into the chat for me. Oh, I see lots of yeses. Although there is room for improvement, isn't there, Jamie? Absolutely. And this is one of those questions where you might say, she's looking for a yes answer, so I'm going to type in yes. But actually, no. So, you have this moment where it's like, I got to look myself in the mirror and really ask myself, am I connected, or is my department connected to the right priorities? Do I even know the right priorities? I think would be the follow-up question here. A lot of times we think we know, but we don't really know. So maybe a homework assignment for you. Oh my God, did she just give us homework? Yes, I did. One of the homework assignments for you after you leave this call today is to, really find out the priorities that you think are the priorities. Are those really the priorities, right? So, just a question for you there. And make sure the homework is essay. Yes, it will be, it's an essay question, double spaced, 5 pages, please, 500 words at least. Turn that into Shannon Herrera, though. She'll grade it.
I'm on top of that.
Okay, so number 2, be sure that we're connecting with the right content. So when you think about our North Star, then do we have the right content in place? So, and this automatically then connects with what the 3rd principle is, which are we connecting with relevance? So we have our North Star. We're connecting our learning content to that North Star, but then we're making sure it's not like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. These things all work together. So we want to be sure that we're connecting relevant content to our North Star. Now, what does that mean to you? So let me ask you, size 36 font, I'm looking through the chat. So Shannon, talk to me. How are you, how does Go One, or how do any of your clients, let's bring one of your clients into this. How are they ensuring that the content that they are getting is indeed relevant to their people and connects to the business North Star?
Yeah, so recently I was working with a customer who was curating content specifically for their front end employees who were dealing with customers. And so one of the things that was really important for them is to make sure that we were speaking their language, so using the kind of terminology that was important to them, and that, showed the company's values. And so, it was a little bit of work to dig into our content and find the right content that was going to really work for them. But in the end, it made such a difference for that customer to be able to deliver content that was like, yes, this content is exactly what we want our customer service employees to be receiving. it's the language we want them to be using. And in the end, it made it so that they were really confident about what the learning plans that they were putting together for their customer service reps. So sometimes this can take a little bit of work, particularly if you're working with maybe a few different content providers. But I think that it's so important that it helps not only just the L&D department feel like they're rolling out something that's really going to work for their customer service reps, but also for those customer service reps to feel like this aligns with my company. It aligns with who I'm supposed to be as an employee and how I'm supposed to interact with my customers. And so that everybody felt like that learning plan that we'd put together was really going to be effective and serve their front end employees. So
I love that. I love that. I love that you pointed out using the right vocabulary, using their language. So important when we talk about connecting relevance to content. And I'm curious for those of you who are listening to share in the chat, what are your thoughts around relevance? How are you making sure that your content is relevant to the people and that it's aligning with the North Star? And I'll continue to build there, Shannon, on your comment. I love that you were honest in saying that this takes a little bit of work.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, curating content, we talked about connecting the content and with the relevance, it can take a little bit of time to find the right thing. And we, at Go One, it's so important that we make sure that we are giving our customers the content that works specifically for them. So, whether that's a format or even sometimes how people are dressed in an e-learning course can make a big difference. Like I've got a number of customers that like, if I see a shirt and tie, like my employees are going to turn off because none of us dress that way. And so, even just things like that can be really important to help your learner feel like, oh yeah, this applies to me and what I do. So I think even just those little things can be really important.
Great point. Great point. Okay, so we've got relevance. We've got our North Star, we have our content, we have our relevance. And next up, we have connecting with the people. And that alludes there, Shannon, with what you were just discussing. So how are we going to connect with the people? And I don't mean through surveys or newsletters or that sort of typical communication practices. What I'm talking about here is managers, right? So we've all been there. And in the chat, you guys can let me know if you've been here before, where you've put out a training program, people participated in it, they took the lessons, they went back to work, and their manager said, I don't care what they said, we don't do it like that here. Does that sound familiar?
I have definitely heard that.
I know I have heard that a time or two. Right? Yes. And Faisal, I see your comment there, kind of it brought in sort of late, but I love that what you're saying there, content that makes you sing. I love that. Yeah. And yes, you guys, yes, this happens. So now how can we help managers build connections with their people? Because they are that important gateway for good, bad, and different. They are the gateway to what happens for your future fit skills. So now what we are proposing is that part of your initiatives, whatever they may be, that they include a communication plan with the managers and give the managers tools to help them connect with their people and to help them provide those lunch and learns. I saw that on earlier up as one of the initiatives that you all are doing. So if you've got lunch and learns, could the managers do the lunch and learns? And if so, how can you help them? What kind of tools can you give to them? One of the things that we're recommending is helping managers develop a power hour with their people. And that power hour could be just a simple discussion around what people are learning or how they're evolving or how they're putting new skills into practice. So it becomes more of a learning exchange between the managers and their people, because then it becomes an important connection. So you've got business alignment, you've got the right content, you've got the right relevance, and now you have a real connection to the people. So that way it's not just managers and leaders who are getting this sort of information, it's everyone. We're democratizing it, right? So if we go back to some of the things that technology can help us with, it can help us democratize what learning is all about, and then connecting with people through management and providing them with solid management tools can help them do that, right? And it's Vanessa, we have a syllabus and a course catalog and give weekly progress updates to the rest of the department. And that's all great. You know, having that sort of foundation really does help with your communication processes with your managers. When tools are provided and there's no manager buy-in, what would I suggest? Well, here's what happens is a lot of times we create these tools without getting management input. And when we don't get management input at the very beginning, then they don't use the tools. So the key here is while you are developing these tools and while you are setting the expectations, you bring the managers into that conversation and say, here's what we would like to create. We would like to create a tool for you and for other managers to help bring learning more up as part of a more upfront conversation with everybody. What ideas do you have? How can you help us? What seems like a fair expectation of your time? You know, so bringing them into that conversation early and often creates more buy-in. And when other managers see other managers participating, then they're going to, then likely what happens is peers do what peers do. So if they see their peers participating in this, a lot of times they want to participate in it too, because they see that their peers see value. Okay, Shannon, did you have any other ideas?
So yeah, going back to kind of like the lunch and learn, but we will often talk about doing a learn and lunch, so that like there's some sort of training that's done beforehand, and then people get together and talk about it. And we found that that can be really valuable, and particularly in that democratizing learning, it can help people connect with even like different levels of management than they maybe would have before. And so that can be a really good way to connect with people.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And that also then ties with connecting with impact.
Yep.
And this is where data comes back into the picture. So we kind of have a technology that sort of underpinned helping us determine what the real business need is and helping us be more flexible, and then looking at data from an entirely different perspective too. But now what we are definitely asking you to do in order to be more future fit is to connect with the impact. So it's not about, I saw a lot of you say you send out survey monkeys, and that's great, because what we're doing there is we're connecting with the learners. And when we connect with the learners, that's always a good thing. But what we want to do is we want to connect with the business. So this means that we have to look at data in a completely different way when it comes to business, assessing business value. And this actually circles around. So if you have your North Star, your business is your North Star. And how are you determining that you are indeed adding business value at the very beginning? So once you've determined your destination, you can determine what it's going to take to be successful, right? It's not unlike running a marathon. You run a marathon, you don't just on the day show up to run 26 miles, right? So you practice and you say, okay, I'm going to get here. And my next practice is I'm going to run this far, and then I'm going to run this far. But most importantly, you need to know where to stop, right? We're not going to keep running forever. So we need to know where to stop. So we have to have that goal in our head. And so now, how are you developing the data to make sure that you're on track to finish that marathon in the time that you wanted to? Because that became your North Star. Your North Star, the value, the impact was being able to say, I completed this marathon within X amount of time, or if it were me, without dying before I got to the end. So how do I make sure that I'm really connecting with the impact? And that goes back to the question that I asked you earlier. So now you can see if you've got these 5 principles, so these 5 principles really do underpin what real learning organizations do. So you have these principles that you are connecting with the right priorities, you're connecting with the right content, you're ensuring that you're connecting with relevance, and that you are connecting with people, and that you're connecting with data for impact. These are all of the right principles. So now I'm going to ask you, which of those 5 principles is going to be your biggest challenge? When you think about becoming future fit and bringing skills, and it's not about we need to know how to program robots as a future skill. Okay, we can see that in coming up, but how do you prepare for that? And these 5 principles help you prepare for that. So let's see what we've got coming up here. Improving connection with data. Thank you for that. As the industry as a whole, I think underestimates the value of data or chases down the wrong data. We've got plenty of data, but it's the wrong data. And that data really is not helping us assess true business value. It's helping us assess whether or not we're pushing people through learning content, but it's not really helping us assess whether or not that content is adding value in the right places at the right time. So what is this telling you, Shannon?
I mean, I really love this. I love that there's the focus on data, because like you said, I think as an industry, we don't connect to the data, or sometimes we don't feel like the data necessarily applies to us, I think. So I think that really digging into that can be really valuable. I also love that there's a focus on maintaining connection with people. As we talked about with technology, that can be really tough. And so I think that keeping that kind of front of mind as you're building out your plans, I think will be really valuable.
Yep, I agree. So I appreciate all of the honesty that's happening here on the screen in front of me. Really important, because we have to have that internal conversation with each other. When I say with each other, I mean with your team, or if you're an individual contributor, maybe it's having conversations with other business people, right? And I encourage you to reach across your business, have lunch with marketing, have lunch with finance, have lunch with your HR partners, have lunch with sales, have lunch with operations, find out what they're doing and find out what's important to them. You may be surprised. You know what? It's not a maybe. You will be. You will be surprised to find out the things that are keeping them up at night are things you were not even aware of. And now you can be such a huge asset by keeping these 5 principles in mind. Now, how can we help you? Right? So it's like, oh, this is all great, Shannon, but now what? Well, now what is the Emerging Stronger team, in a partnership with Go1, who is our publishing partner, created this toolkit. And so this toolkit helps you work through each of the 5 principles. So you can scan this with your phone right now, or you can take note of the URL and you can download them later. But there are 5 individual tools that work as a packet that help you work through each of the 5 principles that we were just discussing. Right, Shannon? So have you had any feedback on those tools?
Yeah, so the feedback from our customers has been really great on this. And I often use it when I'm in conversations with customers as we're going through curation. I'm brought in to help customers curate content that's going to help meet their business goals. And I will often bring this into those conversations to help them start to think about content maybe a little bit differently than they were before, and to have that future mindset when they're looking at their content. And the feedback has been just really great. Oftentimes the comments are things like, oh, these are things I hadn't thought of before, or this gives me a more holistic view on this particular topic. And so, yeah, the feedback has been really fantastic on it.
Excellent, excellent. Because we realize that there's a lot of talking going on here, and we really want to help you put some of these ideas into action. So now let me ask you, when you think about your challenge, so you've got an individual challenge here in your organizations, and let's say you want to focus on emotional intelligence, as a future fit skill, or you want to focus on creativity as a future fit skill. Excuse me. Where would you start, or how are you now going to start? In the chat, I'm going to have you think about this for a second, because I realize that that was a really big question. When you think about, something just happened. I don't know what happened with my deck. When I moved it over into Menti, it copied a lot of my content. That's interesting. Technology is your friend, right, people? Technology is your friend. So where would you start? So if you are doing emotional intelligence as a future fit skill, and you're working on that right now, and you think about the 5 principles, where do you think you need to start? Which areas are you feel like you're doing well? Which areas do you feel like you might need more help with? When you think about emotional intelligence and how it's going to impact business value, how are you going to find out? So let me ask you in the chat, what do you think? Where should you start?
Instill fear in the team. Yeah. I think Faisal has a good place to start with that.
Yeah, sometimes you have
Fear-based.
Sometimes you have to reverse engineer this, right? And you wouldn't necessarily train from a fear perspective, but I think getting that shock value in, it's not unlike safety training, right? A lot of safety training, they open up with somebody crashing and burning, and they have that shock factor that says, if you don't do this, major things will happen to you. So, there's something to be said about that, having that, oh my goodness moment. What else? And then if you have questions, you can still put those questions in the question and answer screen in case we haven't gotten to them. Establishing the right priorities by collaborating with your operations team. That's a great place to start. Great place to start. Somebody earlier had mentioned focus groups, and I really love a good focus group. So much can be discovered. Start a little more on the positive side and work there, more strategic communications. Communication training for management. And that's great, Jennifer. So let's back that up a little bit more. So where are you going to start to determine your communication needs from a business value perspective? I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot there, because communication is a huge topic, right? Communication training has many, many facets to it. So where do you start? And which part of the communication training is going to have the biggest business value and the biggest business impact, right? And I see our organization, yep, focus groups. Oh, I love this, urge the salespeople to think from the customer side. So we're going to get them, we're going to start asking questions about putting them in the customer's place. Building a list. So Elizabeth, building lists, prioritizing them under specific parameters, such as how important is the revenue for the company. Oh, I love that idea so much, because that really starts with that North Star, doesn't it? And I don't know about you, Shannon, but I'm a Post-it note type of gal. And I love putting stuff on flip chart paper and Post-it notes and moving them around and prioritizing them.
Well, and I think it just is so helpful for not only you, but other people to see the bigger picture, which I really love about that.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And I love that. I have been working with managers for 3 years, having issues that will arise regularly from employees. Yes, having those conversations. Giving them a unified tool, but a source for specific needs. I like that too. So allowing them to be able to adapt and flex different tools, because I can go on a whole different hour rant on the theory of best practices and how that really doesn't help us, because a best practice for you doesn't mean it's a best practice for somebody else. So how can we make that happen? So I love all of these different ideas. Now, what you have on the screen in front of you now, again, the toolkit, but also I wanted to give you a reminder for the ebook. So I shared this QR code at the very beginning of our session. So for those of you who came in late, the everything that you saw today, we expand upon in the ebook, gives you more thoughts and ideas around what we mean by these 5 principles and how these 5 principles can be used for you. And then also, once again, the toolkit. So you have that in front of you to be able to access. And then if you really want to dig deeper into this, the Emerging Stronger team is hosting a masterclass right now that's working us all the way through these principles and all through these tools, and how to look at your world differently from an L&D perspective. So if you are really interested in digging this down deeper, we have this program available for you too. So Shannon, do you have any closing thoughts before we take any questions? We have just a couple of moments left where we can take some questions from people, but do you have any closing thoughts?
I think just that as we look at, as we look at ensuring our employees are future fit, I think that the most important thing is understanding them as humans and really thinking about how we can make that human connection. And when we're thinking about future fit skills, that it's about the future fit in their current role, in their future roles, hopefully with your company, but not necessarily, and that's okay. But really just thinking about how to connect the human to what kind of learning paths that you're putting out there, and allowing them to be authentic in the way that they're consuming the content. So
yes. And I love that, Shannon. I love that. I love using the word human instead of learner, because we're all learning at some point, but we're all humans. We're all humans sitting behind our computers right now and looking into the screens and seeing you and I seeing each other anyway, but seeing you in the chat. It's just humans talking to humans, right? And I think that having that human-centered perspective really does matter.
Yep.
So we want to, again, if there were any additional questions, we do have a couple of moments left over for that. But from me, Shannon Tipton, I want to say thank you for joining us today. It's been a lively conversation, and I hope that you were able to take some actionable ideas. And maybe that, while Shannon closes her thoughts, maybe that's something that you can put into the chat for us right now, is what is one actionable idea that you can use today that you got? What is one idea that you gained from our conversation today that you can use? So Shannon, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for joining us, and for thinking, just as you think about this and thinking about content and how you can connect that to your customers. GoOne has a lot of great options there. If you're interested, reach out. And yeah, thank you for joining us and sharing your ideas and thoughts through the chat.
Absolutely. I'm seeing lots of love in the chat, so we appreciate that. And so I don't see any further questions, but I would love to see at least one. If somebody pop in an idea for me that you can take and use. Are the slides available? I believe that they are going to make the slides available to you. So thank you, Michelle. You like the 5 principles. I appreciate that. We think that they're important. Those 5 principles underpin what we're going to be doing in the future. We've got to pay attention. Otherwise, we're going to have robots writing our content for us, which can happen. That's not that far off, right? That's a whole different conversation. So there we go. So Rhonda, thank you. Put the slides into the chat for you. We'll start with validating the North Star. Thank you, Karen. Thank you for that. That's the best thing that I've seen, that you're going to validate your North Star. Thank you for that. Focus more on data. Thank you. says the link has a risk. So Rhonda, you may want to look into that.
I just tested it. The link, yeah, it seems to have worked for everyone else. So you just might want to maybe just log out of hr.com and back in. That might help you. All right. And yeah, lots of great comments coming in there, Shannon and Shannon, or Shannon squared.
Shannon
And
squared.
I too want to say excellent presentation. Thank you both so very much, and to the folks at Go One. And this has been recorded, so I will have this archived on hr.com shortly. Your HRCI credit will appear in your hr.com account within 2 business days, and we'll send you an email. It'll have your credit information and then as well a link to view the archive recording again. You'll also note I put a link in the chat area to an exit survey. It's going to pop open on a new browser on your computer as I close out the session. So your feedback is very important to us and to the folks that Go On. So just take a few moments to fill that out. Again, thank you so much, Shannon and Shannon, and take good care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.